What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the Royale YouTube channel. I'm your host, Kevin Coleman, and we're back with another Dynasty mock draft. So I had a little bit of some requests in the Patreon, but also here on YouTube. And you guys were like, hey, we like to see different Dynasty mocks, not just 12 team. And we try to do that on this channel. I've thrown in 14 teamers, and we were going to do another 14 team Dynasty mock, PPR, tight end premium. And, looking at where the values are right now, and we did one pre-draft. So this is, not with the rookies. Now this one has the rookies, and we're going to be diving into that and just kind of showing you guys where value's at. I think this is Dynasty season, June, July. People are going to get in some startups. They like to wait until the rookie draft's over and until like guys start, getting bored over the summer. So we're going to be looking at 12 rounds. I'm also going to show you different team builds, my team build, how I kind of addressed it. So some draft strategy, and then looking at like best players available after that to give you guys kind of a concept of who is left on that draft board. So appreciate you guys tuning in. After the intro, we'll dive into the mock. All right, let's dive into this bad boy and kind of look at it. Had to book my guy Trey Lance on there because he gets too much hate out there in fantasy. But let's go through the first 3 rounds. So this is a 14-team draft. So what we're going to do is we're going to be diving into like our favorite pick of each one and in our biggest value change. And you can always pause it. That's why I put it on the screen there. And you can kind of take a look at team builds. I think the one thing you should notice, obviously, quarterback's going to go. And the 14-team format with super flex drafts, I think the one thing you got to realize is that quarterbacks are so much more valuable, especially in super flex. And this is the cheapest you're going to get quarterbacks. So when you're looking at like in these drafts, when you're sitting there at 14 teamer, just know if you wait on quarterbacks, that can be tough if you don't hit on those late round guys. If you miss, you're going to owe the league a lot of capital to try to go get a quarterback. And I think that's something to note as you dive in here. Now, first round, pretty much the same as throughout, dynasty drafts. Anthony Richardson at 114 is pretty good value. Watson and everything there. I will say my favorite pick right now is probably Jahmyr Gibbs, in dynasty going at the 309, after Barkley. I think the running back position, if you're going to target a PPR guy and how that kind of looks, I like that third round value. After the draft, right after the draft, he's going to the second round, right? So if you're looking at that from a value perspective, you're definitely getting more value there. The biggest value change on this draft was Trey Lance. He went in the third round. Now, his ADP right now is quarterback 24, according to DLF. In this draft, when you kind of look at the board, he's in that 14 to 16 range, right after Tua and Kyler and CJ in that area. So that's a big value change here. I do think that, I don't mind the pick because he's getting drafted basically at what he was probably in the offseason. This just shows you the value of the quarterbacks. You have to address that quarterback position and go get it, or you're going to be in some trouble, right? And if you look at the wide receivers, I think that you see a lot of team builds through the wide receiver position. You'll look at even like the 113. He went Lamb, Wilson, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's going to build through his wide receivers. We're going to highlight some of these drafts, but that's kind of how the board plays out. So again, the reason why we do these is to show you kind of where the tiers are. So when you're in your dynasty draft, if you want to kind of adjust and get ahead of somewhere these guys are going, you can do that, right? You can move and maneuver, and it gives you an idea where these players are going in drafts. Now, rounds 4 through 6, this is where you start seeing a lot of the veterans go. Like that round 4 is really the veteran group. Metcalf is considered that. Stevenson, Hawkinson, Eckler, Judy, I guess, could be in there. Jacobs, definitely. Adams, like those type of guys are definitely going to be your veteran group. And then you get those rookie wide receivers. So Addison and Quentin Johnson there. My favorite pick is still J.K. Dobbins. I know, the spring, it looks like he wasn't in there in terms of like in your June, the summer, whatever the case may be, in mini camp. I think he's going to be okay. And if you're looking for a running back in the 14-teamer in the 5th round, I think, 6th round draft cap or ADP, in that area, that's not bad for JK. Considering what he can be, I wrote a big piece on the offense for the Baltimore Ravens. Go check that out on Football Guys if you're a subscriber. I think he definitely could be highlighted well, right? Biggest value change is probably DK. So DK Metcalf's definitely dropped a little bit in these drafts. That's something to note. He's going at the 404. But again, remember, this is 14-teamer. So he's starting to dip a little bit. JSN's getting drafted ahead of him. So that is something to think about. Like maybe if you want to go after DK and value-wise, you might be able to go do that. Other than that, other things that start out, just look at the quarterbacks, right? You see kind of a really big tier break. You have Goff You have Cousin, Wilson, Love, Aaron Rodgers, and Carr, right? And if those are your QBs twos, or some of them QB ones, you could be in a little bit of trouble in terms of that value and what you're going to get back for it. Now, round 7 through 9, when we kind of dive into this one, this is where you start, Brock Purdy, biggest value change. I might as well start there. The 703, getting drafted basically 4 rounds after Lance, he could be the starting quarterback. That's the ultimate risk when you draft 49ers quarterbacks in these things. Is like you could get a hell of a value. You get the starting quarterback for the 49ers in an offense that puts up consistent, low-end quarterback one numbers in the 7th round, or you get a guy that's a backup, right? Like that's the risk you're going to take, and it really depends on how you want to attack it. My favorite pick, though, is going to be Rachaad White. Rashaad's one of those guys who's going to fall into low-end running back one volume, right? Whether he is efficient there, that's up to you to decide if you're going to draft him. But for a guy that might be a running back 12, not out of the question, even looking at Football Guys projections at 7-11, in terms of a 14-round, 14-teamer, I like that value, right? And it is where you get all the tight ends that people wait on, right? And if you look at round 9, you're looking at Laporta, Ingram, Chig, Cole Kmet, Dolchitz, those guys. Freiermuth in there and Mayer. So like this is where people are going to target it. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to get ahead a little bit of the game, I want to go attack that tight end position earlier, or hey, if I wait on a tight end, this is where my guys usually going. Maybe I draft them around earlier, or whatever the case may be. That's something to look at. Now, rounds 10 through 12, when you're diving into these last 3 rounds here, as you go through here, this is where you start the depth, right? So when we're thinking of a 14-teamer, this is where you start seeing a lot of the deeper guys. You're looking at a lot of like the Michael Thomases, right? Those veterans that maybe that 1 or 2 years that you're trying to squeeze out of him. My favorite pick is still going to be Antonio Gibson. He's getting a lot of buzz right now. Before I had talked about him, wrote about him, and did a lot of stuff on him like 3 months ago. Now he's starting to get a little bit buzzy getting in that 10th round. I still like that value because from a PPR standpoint, he's probably a standalone play this year. And if he's your running back 2 on a roster on like a wide receiver build, you could be comfortable with Gibson getting those 10 to 12 points in PPR if they use him, right? And then he's an injury rate from probably 3 down work. Now, there's concerns about, obviously, will he be back? Obviously, are they going to bring in Kareem Hunt? Like, there's concerns there. So it's not a risk-free, but none of these guys are going to be risk-free, right? When we're talking about rounds 10 through 12, that's a problem. Biggest value change is Irv Smith sneaking in here. So Irv Smith getting into that range in the 12th round. Obviously, ADP is going to be a little bit different because it's 14-teamer. But he's starting to get a little bit buzz now, right? Going to the Cincinnati Bengals, looking for that late round tight end that maybe can just score touchdowns, right? He's really a touchdown dependent guy in the red zone. They're going to utilize him. I know with Burrow, though, the tight end position the last 3 or 4 years, there's been some tied into, not bad. Like, hey, you could plug and play and knock it a 0 right from that tight end position. Other guys to highlight, Khalil Herbert is in there from the running back position. You get a lot of backups that maybe have upside if the guys get injured ahead of them. Rashad Penny, a lot of people are touting them, right? So Rashad Penny in that 12th round, that could be something to look at in terms of value for your dynasty team. Now, we're going to take a final outlook of everything. So this is a good time to pause it, look at team builds. What do you like? Where is the value at, right? I'm going to highlight a couple. I'm going to highlight mine and a couple other guys that I think, and these are all really good managers for the in terms of dynasty. I know most of them, if not all of them, and I thought they built their teams very well in terms of where you're waiting on. The first one I'm going to show you is mine, obviously, because I can give you that analysis. For me, I wanted to really solidify those first 2 quarterbacks. And then I took Pitts early, and people might not like that. He's tied in 2 off the board. Andrews was still there. I like Andrews this year. I think he could be really the tight end 1 overall. But if I can add Pitts to a 14-team league with a positional advantage in PPR there, I'm okay with that. But you guys let me know. Do you think that's too early for Pitts? Where do you think that value's at? Then you have Mahomes and Stroud. I'm good with that. Solidify my 2 quarterbacks. And then I just built through my wide receivers. Now, I knew knowingly if I took Pitts, I was probably going to wait on the running back position. So I wanted to show you kind of what that looked like. And I took Addison, Johnson, and Brown, right? Addison and Johnston. I think Johnson has an inside track of maybe being wide receiver 1 with Herbert in the next couple of years. You have Addison being a solid wide receiver 2. Marquise Brown is going to get a ton of volume this year, and that's a guy that you can maybe move. You can kind of keep him on your roster. He's still young. Then I had Akers and Miller were my kind of two guys, and Akers could step up, be that guy. I know he's coming off the Achilles, but he looked good down the stretch last year. Then you have Levis as my QB3 in a 14-teamer. I felt like that was value. Like if he could be the starter, maybe he takes over. That's still a really good value, and I don't mind playing the value game with quarterbacks at that spot. Trey McBride is the question mark. Can he kind of take over there? And I know I had Brown there. Again, this is a mock, so this happens sometimes. And then Hyatt and Perrine. I'm a big, Samaje Perine guy. I think that Perine could step in, be that guy early in the season. Then you have some value and some plays there, and that's kind of how you look at it. The next guy that I want to kind of highlight here is Imran Shah. He's a fellow teacher and a really good analyst. Go follow him on Twitter. Jamar Chase, Dak Prescott, Kupp, Eckler, Chubb, really a win now build, right? So he's going for it here. Kittle, Waller, and then he got Ritter as his QB2, Stafford. Chig is in there and Michael Thomas. So he really went for it. And I think this is one of those areas where I want to show you a win now build. And would you be comfortable drafting this? Because there's a lot of dynasty tier, dropping there, like Eckler and Chubb and even maybe Kupp, right? Kittle, Waller, where those guys are at. And definitely Michael Thomas. Now, there are some hot takes out there that people think Michael Thomas might be able to be the wide receiver 1 if he stays healthy. I mean, if you're getting him that in the 11th or 12th round in a 14-teamer, that's value. Now, next guy I wanted to show real quick, FF Tony. I loved his start. Jackson and Tua. Smith, Judy, Moore is a very, very solid wide receiver room. If Judy can step up and be that wide receiver 1 in Denver, that's a better room, right? Then we went Swift, Sanders, and the chain. I like all three of those guys. I love Swift and Sanders there. I just laugh because it's Philly and Carolina now. They just switched in terms of Sanders being there now and not in Philadelphia. Ingram, Howe, Mechie, and Algier. I love the Mechie pick. I really wanted to get Mechie on the back end. But those are good values there. And this just shows you, if you draft like I did, I drafted a young second quarterback. He drafted 2 veteran quarterbacks that could have quarterback 1 potential. And then he kind of fills his team around it, right? So I wanted to definitely show you those guys and where they came at. Now, who was still on the board? So this gives you an idea, if you're going to wait on quarterbacks and you go back to this board, right? So if you go back to here and you say, okay, I'm going to wait on quarterbacks, this is where I want to kind of look for this. If I'm going to be, for example, the Lamb guy has Love and Mac Jones and Jimmy, but maybe I wanted to get another one. Or if I want that third quarterback who's still on the board, Baker Mayfield is there. Stetson Bennett is still there. Kyle Trask. That Buccaneers quarterback room is going to be kind of a mess. So just to give you an idea, that might be one of those things you just avoid. Stetson Bennett's been getting love from his coaching staff. Stafford, is he healthy, right? If Stafford's healthy, Bennett's not going to see the field. Sam Darnold, again, dart throw, Zach Wilson. So you can see not a lot of quarterbacks left on this board, and there's a reason for that. It's 14-team league and Superflex. Running backs, Elijah Mitchell's the best one according to ADP, Damian Harris, Devin Singletary, Donta Foreman, and Ezekiel Elliott. I think the question mark here is I like Harris, but where's the volume going to be? James Cook seems to be he's going to be that receiving back there. The guys I like the most in this one is Devin Singletary because he's going to be at pass catching. I like Elijah Mitchell too because he's an injury away from being very, very relevant, right? To CMC, who did stay healthy last year, but we've seen that before. So, Singletary, I highlighted on my Football Guys last video for Football Guys. Singletary is one of those guys that, was a good pass blocker, going to be on the field in third down, has shown that he can lead an offense. Not carry it, but at least be out there, right? They didn't really utilize him in the passing game, but they could, right? In Houston, they didn't necessarily do that in Buffalo. So that's the running backs. When you're looking at wide receivers and what we have there, Rondale Robinson, Alan Lazard, Alec Pierce, Romeo Dubes, and then Tank Dell. Again, nothing going to move the needle here. I do like Romeo, though, at that ADP. The Green Bay Packers, if you're not a huge believer in Watson, paying wide receiver 20 to 24 prices for Watson might not be what you want to do from the offense. Maybe you just take Romeo late, right? He's still available in the 13th round of a Superflex 14-teamer. That's something to look at. And then the last one, tight ends. Isaiah Likely could be highlighted in that Ravens offense, especially if Rashad Bateman's not going to be healthy enough to go. They love those, the 2 tight end sets. You're going to see that from what he did in Georgia, Todd Monken's offense. That might be a fun play late. Dawson Knox, Darnell Washington, Mike Gesicki. I know people really like Mike in terms of where he's going and his value that he could have. And Juwan Johnson, man, he's just a touchdown scorer. So if you're looking for that guy that maybe can score some touchdowns next year and just plug him in, he's the guy to kind of look at. So that's the mock. I hope you guys enjoyed it. again, I'm trying to give you guys in terms of the content on this. There's so much content out there. I know it. I mean, you go to every YouTube fantasy YouTube out there, there's content everywhere. But for this channel, we're trying to hit Devy. We're trying to hit Dynasty. We did a little bit of redraft, but in general, just trying to help you become better Dynasty and fantasy managers and to give you guys more of a broad spectrum. So if you like that, you enjoy that, hit that like button, hit the sub button. We are pushing for 3,000 subs by the end of this month. It's probably a lofty goal, but it's something that we've really wanted since we started this thing based back in December. And that would be a great, great goal for us. So we appreciate you guys. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think about the draft. Where do you think the value is at? And I will see you guys next time.